Hi, everyone. It is so wonderful to see you and to spend time with you this evening. My name is Katerina Stoikova. I am the founder and senior editor of Accents Publishing. We are an independent press based in Lexington, Kentucky. Periodically, we bring to you an author of a book published by Accents Publishing, and we spend an hour with that author and that book, and we get to ask questions. A few books that we have featured recently and published and featured recently are Frank X. Walker's Masked Man Black, Pandemic and Protest Poems, Karen Schubert's The Compost Reader, Tina Parker's Lock Her Up, and these are all poetry books. We have published over 80 poetry books in our 12-year tenure as a publisher, and our first novella came out earlier this year, and it is this is Homegoing by Toni Ann Johnson, a brilliant novella addressing race issues. Today, the book of the hour is It's Not Easy Being a Moth. It's Not Easy Being a Moth by Mark Lee Webb. I first want to say that Mark and I go way back. We met about 10 years ago when he was working on his chapbook, Whatever It Is, a brilliant look into physical illness and lyrical exposition of the vulnerability of the body. Then Mark published translations of mine in Nero Fellow, the lovely journal he edits. And I interviewed him and Molly on my radio show, Accents. And they both were fascinating guests. And Molly even played the dulcimer live in the studio. Do you remember, Mark? It was fun, yeah. Mark is a multi-talented, creative, and hardworking person. He's a poet, photographer, and a musician. Think about the range of talents and skills that one person needs to possess in order to be successful in all these areas. I really, really admire his breadth. I think that is so incredibly cool, Mark. I admire you so much. And when Mark approached me with his first full-length book, I immediately knew that I wanted it. And then when I read it, I was absolutely sure. I'll tell you several things I loved about the book, and then I'll let Mark read and speak about his book. I love the subtle humor in it, which is really, really difficult to achieve. And I love the kindness and gentle acceptance of the younger version of self. You know, the book is filled with kindness and beauty and acceptance. I love that every poem in this book is a mature poem, one that has been worked on, edited, perfected. A single glance at the form and the shape of each poem shows consideration of form, shape, lineation, and every aspect of craft that has been honed of years upon years and upon years. And that is even without reading the poems. And when you read the poems, you can really see how hard this author has worked. And this just doesn't happen like that. It requires tremendous reading and work on his craft for many years, which Mark has done, for sure. Here is a quote from Marcus Jackson. The collection examines the intersections between youth and grief, between consciousness and intimacy, between perspective and instinct, all the while taking the care required to find the language that can simultaneously delight and haunt. I hope you enjoy this collection as much as I have. I'll turn over the virtual mic to Mark now, and please help me welcome Mark Lee Webb and his book, It's Not Easy Being a Moth.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Katerina. I appreciate that. We do go back several years, and I remember when we came into the studio, Molly played her dulcimer, and we talked a little bit about poetry as well. So that was a fine opportunity. I do want to thank you in particular, Katerina, for facilitating this reading, and also thank you for selecting my book for publication. Known about Accents Publishing for many years, and I always had a dream. Wow, wouldn't it be wonderful if at some point in my life I could get a book published by Accents. It's just an amazing organization. And Katerina, your team, the team that helped shape my book, assemble it, edit it, proof it, just very professional and thorough. And what I mean by that, I'm from California, and I'm embarrassed to say that they found errors in spelling of beaches and places that were very familiar to me around Los Angeles, places I used to go, almost on a daily basis to, sometimes to the beach when I was a teenager. And they found errors in my spelling. So you just have a great team there, and I appreciate their diligence and just all their help in crafting this book. So thank you. So a big shout out to you guys. What I wanted to do before I did a reading, before I actually read the poems, I thought I'd briefly talk about the structure of the book a little bit. And why do I think that's important? Well, for one, because of some of the classes I took at Queen's University of Charlotte in pursuit of my MFA, and one class in particular taught by Robert Polito on shaping the book. And that was 4 years ago, and I still keep that with me. And I refer to the paper I had to do on those books often as I'm writing. In his class, we looked closely at the organization of a book of poetry, and he assigned 3 books, and I would encourage anybody to look at these 3 books as well. One is, and it's interesting, it's Voyage of the Sable Venus by Robert Coste Lewis. Interesting, that book was assigned all 4 semesters. There was one of the classes every semester had that book assigned for different reasons, and Robert chose it to demonstrate how to shape a book. Another one was called Patter by Douglas Kearney, and the third book that he assigned was Snowflake Different Streets by Eileen Miles. What came across is these books are not collections of disparate poems. Instead, they're sets of poems conceived as a unit, and they're written and they're meant to be read together. As an example, Lewis binds all her poems together through a very singular and dramatic subject matter. The Miles book is actually 2 separate books. They're bound together, but arranged so they meet in the middle, and the text of each book is upside down from the other. In the snowflake section, most of the poems were written while she was driving to LA. She was coming back to LA from San Diego, and they were written. She actually dictated them as she was writing, and the poems are connected by that journey. And in the companion book, Different Streets, she writes about the differences and reconciliation of those differences between her and her lover. And in Patter, a very interesting book by Douglas Kearney, the book is made up of what I call, well, for lack of a better word, puzzle poems. They're fractured, they're broken, they tumble. The poems, in a sense, they tumble into each other and within each other. And that gives the book a cohesiveness. It's cohesiveness through fracture, if you will, similar to, if you know the art of Jean-Michel Basquiat, his art. The book by Patter by Douglas Kearney is similar to that. Which brings us to my book, It's Not Easy Being a Moth. The setting for all my poems is Southern California. They're all from the viewpoint of a singular speaker, but at different stages in that speaker's life. In chapter 1, which is called Mall Cool, the speaker's a Mall Cool, San Fernando Valley teenager in the late 60s, early 70s. In chapter 2, It's Not Easy Being a Moth, we move up in time, and now the same speaker, but he's middle-aged. He's a middle-aged man. and he's going through a separation from his wife. In chapter 3, which is called "It's the Vague That'll Kill You," he's a very seasoned and jaded senior citizen. There's a narrative arc throughout the book. The constant through all the chapters is the geography and the landmarks of Southern California, which sort of become an actual character through the book. But the landscape stays constant. So while the landscape change stays constant, the speaker's perspective and interpretation of that landscape and the changes in that speaker's life from the beginning of the book to the final poem. And that's what the book is about. I'll go ahead and do the big reveal. I was playing around with Molly on this, asking her, so Molly, why do you think it's so darn hard to be a moth? So, and how I chose the title of the poem. Well, it's twofold on why it's so hard to be a moth. It's not easy being a moth. First, it's harder to be a moth than a butterfly. Butterflies are monarchs. They're beautiful. They're cultivated. They're protected. They're adored. Moths are kind of the ugly cousins. They're not thought of in the same glowing way as a butterfly. Secondly, moths are always in pursuit of an elusive light. They swarm around the light at night, and they usually never attain their goal. Sometimes they even get burned and die from the light and die in their quest for the light. So those are the two reasons why it's not easy being a moth. And if hopefully you'll purchase the book and you'll read through this, and then you'll gain an understanding of why I titled the poem, "It's Not Easy Being a Moth." What I'll do now is I'll read some poems from each chapter, and then afterwards we'll have a discussion. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer those questions. So we will start with poems from the first chapter. The first chapter is called "Mall Cool," and I'll read the poem, "Mall Cool." We circle inside Clyde Wallach Music City listening booths, munching morals nuts between tokes. My lips, they are grape. While Topanga Plaza angels arabesque behind plexiglass, candlestick spirals between Broadway and May Company, orange Julius with extra egg, glycerin drips down nylon fountain tubes, diffusing our stoner brains. My liver has goosebumps, and I know that's the organ that stays warmest the longest after you're dead. Where did Billy Fletcher get this shit? It's 95 degrees in Woodland Hills. They're turning off the fountain for the night. I better get straight. Jim Morrison has died. I'm eating pancakes at Sambo's thinking I'm so wasted from Billy's party last night. Maybe I'll thumb out to the beach, take a nap on the sand, don't even need a towel, when suddenly my waitress tells me Jim Morrison has died. She goes on about how sometimes he'd come in here late at night for pancakes before nodding off in a booth. Did I know about that one time in the Mojave, Jim saw dead Navajos scattered all over the highway? One of the Indian souls crawled right into his body. It creeped Jim out so much, he wrote Peace Frog, and I think, well, yeah, it's too bad about Jim. Maybe today I'll thumb out to the beach, climb over the jetty, crash Paradise Cove, and watch topless girls on the other side. To my lab partner killed on a motorcycle. Our principal announced what happened this morning, and by the time Ronnie told your story in PE, you never had mono in May or a cold New Year's Eve. You left me alone with our cat in biology class, picked from a pile of plastic-wrapped corpses before dissection started. Remember how you stroked her head, still dripping with formaldehyde, then demanded a scalpel, making decisive cuts while other girls cowered? You told me never to believe in anything I can't hear, like snow. Warned me about Lake Tahoe, how it's too deep to freeze. Tonight, instead of going to your funeral, I walked along Encino Reservoir, hoping for hail, because hail makes lots of noise. Now we'll move on to chapter 2. It's not easy being a moth, and I'll start out with the poem, It's Not Easy Being a Moth. Almost butterfly, Spanish moon, Chinese luna, tiny scales diffracting light. Rub the wings, and illusion dissolves into fingertips. You are here on a whim, a woman hued because you slipped, saying, I love you first, landing a season early. No one pays attention in the beginning. Threads from fibers of the maguey plant, the excessive number of sewing needles. I wear the coton instead of shirts, loincloth instead of pants, feet bare, no shoes. At night, we sleep in patterns of checkered embroidered pearls you stitch from subsequent cotton. And this bruise I got trying on new hats, I'm still waiting to see how we emerge. Used to be, you could tell which house by the flowers. Here, not much lasts long. Before buying a bushel of moths, yellow crown, yellow dream, I warned my wife to sweep strays out of the attic, that ripe avocados give slightly when gently squeezed. If it wasn't for the weather, we'd have missed each other. And on days it doesn't rain, we reseed dunes with native plants, sagebrush and saltgrass, primrose and poppies. Let's stand barrel cactus and coastal prickly pears, but we eradicate Mexican feathers. Next month, strawberry pickers and camarillo, and the old braquero squatting on the Safeway side lot. To get here, take the fork in the road. The next poem is called Parsimony. On San Nicolas Island, indigenous men used cactus thorns to carve the universe on their wives until the women bled. Then applied mezcal to produce blue tattoos etched from eyebrow to breast. Women who wore shell beads, the colors of beginning dawn sky. It is much later now. I am married, and my wife tells me she never had a lover who said, you are fine, which makes me feel guilty for all the Rorschach tests answered, I just see ink. Forgive me. And all the other husbands who wear hip waders, go surf fishing at Leo Carrillo State Beach to avoid long conversations. Husbands who keep secrets, where to collect the best perch baits of mussel and ghost shrimp. Channel Islands are out there somewhere, you just can't see them for the fog. Power plant smokestacks at Morro Bay never find their way into picture postcards. The human body sheds 600,000 skin cells every day, but you never lose sight of a tattoo. Scars too deep to be erased by a woman's own flesh. What happens when you don't wear gloves? Trimming oleander along the back fence might be easier than a few too many pills. They'd say, he forgot to wear gloves. Whatever happens after that is none of my business. Let my wife handle the details. Sparklers, maybe. Taquitos fried just right. Hire a juggler, the man from Venice Beach with a hand hanging from his elbow. Invite Vatos and El Dorados selling pulque liquor brewed in milk bottles. Thursday, a classified ad for the antique shaving stand I stored in the shed. She always liked the back left leg, how it wobbled. And the lacquer finish, not original. It's worth $250, but she'll take 75. That's why I married her. I don't have any better place to be since you started staring at me like I was a pre-Columbian pot. In the middle, I settled. Whatever road I drive now, it's private access. There's a food stand with the best chili cheese dogs in Carpinteria next to a Japanese nursery selling bonsai, but the trees are brown and brittle. They need new pots, water, maybe a light root trim. The owner pours warm beer into Hakkasan flat tea bowls, sets them along the walkway to catch slugs and snails. This is where I go when I want to come home. Postcard from Morro Bay. In a box of things you left behind, sea urchin, slug, snail, extremes of low life, I found a postcard addressed to me without a stamp. On the front is a picture of a man on a surfboard holding an umbrella in his left hand, which is odd because, well, the easiest way to keep from getting wet is to avoid the ocean. You can make someone believe anything with a postcard. Having a good time. Wish you were here. That time you sent one from Morro Bay. You tried to coax me. Let's go cliff diving. You said, let's jump off Morro Rock. An invertebrate matter to you, the distance between sea and sky. You knew I was afraid of heights, but still you teased me, suggesting a trip even farther up the coast to San Simeon, maybe Big Sur. I could never go that high. So I stayed home alone at sea level, digging holes in the sand, burying myself. Along came a tide, and I disappeared. I don't think I'll be here much longer. It's the wrong exit, and I'm lost on my way to Malibu Beach. I might not hear the freeway if the car windows were up, but it's hot. They're rolled down, and damn the adobe dust dulling the view. I follow a detour down to dirt on a plot of land marked only with tire tracks. I don't think anybody really lives here. It seems more like a spot to crash between seasons of dates and figs, pieced together with sheets and scavenged boards. I wave to a girl who's sitting on a floor made entirely of discarded wood doors, a girl with coyote thistles stuck to her socks. She tells me, there's no place here to swim. She says, there's no beach, just creeks that always run dry, but never the same way twice. And the last poem from the second chapter I read is called After You Drove. After you drove from Ojai to the foot of Adobe Hill, found the Chumas Kosho near a grove of sycamores, you came home and said everything I told you was a lie. You believe in sympathetic magic. Rattle carved a coyote bone to cure crowning teeth. Hawk feather halos stitched from fiber of milkweed adorned with glass beads. Keep a cache of polished charm stones for casting spells. But California summers, all the hills crickling to ginger, little ponds on little ranches baked dry. Santa Ana gusts dust chaparral to shades of buff brown, the air sick with sage, brush, and scrub rolling down the arroyos. I worry over sidewalk stains from walnut shrubs in our front yard. August brush fire scorching the shake roof, sea clips eroding along the palisades. You pick a mackerel's eye from the claw of a crab and make believe it's a pearl. Swim with speckled sea snakes in Morro Bay. Lay low. Conjure me down. And next, I'll read a few poems from the final chapter. The final chapter is called "It's the Vague That'll Kill You," and none of these poems are titled; they're just numbered. So the title of the chapter is "It's the Vague That'll Kill You." On Olvera Street, there is a Canaria de la Fortuna, and if you pay $1.50, the yellow bird will hop over to a box and pick a paper slip with your fortune. But the fortune is written in Mayan, or maybe Aztec, some sort of characters, not Spanish, not English, and only the brujo who takes your money knows. I don't even think the canary can read it. Me in LA, it's complicated. Like, we lay together in the same bed, but don't sleep with each other. Because this place is really chicken noodle, occasional stir fry, Cleveland and culottes, Des Moines wearing Tommy Bahama, accidental fruit fermentation, a layered acrylic interpretation of acid rain. Sometimes I stop, say hello, chat with young Angelitas working in the massage parlor next door who blow promises through rings of sandalwood incense burning behind beaded curtains. I collect their bones on Dia de Muertos, decorate Caracas sugar cube skulls with flowers, yellow marigold, gladiola, yellow marigold, every girl a petal. Leave tissue paper pillows so they can rest after the journey. California is out of water. All the palms are dead, but it's raining in Romania where a man cuts graveyard grass with scissors, eats a cheese sandwich. After that, he cuts more grass. I picnic with Orange County carnivores and immigrant Bucharest acrobats in Evergreen Cemetery on the east side of LA. Have my picture taken next to the cement lion. Listen to aged midgets brag about that time in 35. Sister Amy Semple McPherson preached to the circus about her resurrection in Agua Prieta. How Sister laid hands on the snake lady and cured scales. Didi Ramon is buried in Hollywood forever alongside Valentino and DeMille. Sunset Strip is shattered. All that's left are bags of sugar skulls and paper marigold petals. Every corner, a Katrina or Coco working. When they built the last freeway, scraped away what was left of old LA, I tried living in Corona del Mar, where there is an honest to goodness sunset, but breakers there are swirls of asphalt with no swimming signs. I hate it. Someone has to. Warhol said, Paul Newman drinks Coke, Liz Taylor drinks Coke, a Coke is a Coke, and no amount of money can buy a better Coke than the Coke the bum on the corner is drinking. But Warhol, he was New York snow. He didn't know we had more flavors here. Snorkelers scouting for sea urchins in waters off San Miguel, eaten by a shark. Diver hunting Anacapa lobsters drowns from the bends. Girl with 19 recent fillings in her notably buck teeth, multiple stab wounds, and a slit throat found wearing hip-hugging bell-bottoms someone painted blue daisies with red centers on. Her body dragged across dust and scrub and brush, dumped down an embankment off Highway 1. Flea market marlin nailed over my front door for luck. Dirty plates and a few long neck Coors half trunks sit on the table next to my bed. It is 95 degrees in the valley. Because bones are dusty and dry this time of year, relatives stack altars with slices of watermelon and rice wine, cover the face of their thirsty ghost with tissues smudged with silver. I take a long drag on a camel, then exhale real slow like, roll over in my bed, gaze out the window. How far is the ocean? I always liked the ocean. I no longer dressed in pelican feathers or leather sewn with sinews of seal, afraid of condors, of live oaks, how they cling to their leaves in winter. December in Malibu, and all the stars are celebrating the solstice in Cabo. This restaurant empty except for me. I don't want to split for Baja. Those beaches have rocks all the same. I'm tired. Think I'll take the freeway home, crawl into my call before I drown. And then the final poem that I'll read, which is the final poem of the book. I never planned on creeks that always run dry, but never the same way twice. Never learned to wait the weather out until it wrinkles June and the hills crinkle to ginger. A little of this or a little of that missing each day. Jimmy Page said, your best days are all about the dynamics. Whisper to the thunder invites you in, light and shade. You find mystery in a shadow. But my best days, they're scattered all over a mountain near Malibu named Ladyface, now a distant and gray impression, more glazed than granite. There's a fog rolling around these arroyos, smearing Ladyface across my eyes. Are eyes of a rattlesnake oblong and peaked, or are they round? I can't tell anymore. There are too many shadows. It's the vague that'll kill you. And with that, I'm done with my reading, and I appreciate it. So, Katerina?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Such
Appreciate
wonderful reading. Thank you for giving us so much of yourself today. I appreciate it very much. And right now we are open for questions from the audience. And if the audience doesn't have any questions, I have a few of my own.
All right. I'll try to answer them.
Yeah.
So Mike, Debbie.
Oh, I'm kind of reeling just a little bit. I'm gonna be honest with you. I was not expecting to be moved in the way that I was. I can tell that you put into some of those a lot of pain, and for an instant, and this is the highest compliment I can give to you. For an instant, I felt as if I was a young kid again, teen, with all that existential angst, with all that, possibility of the future. It's just like you time traveled us with some of those poems, and I thought they were brilliant. I don't really have any questions other than, okay, I do. I do have a question.
All right.
How, okay, I don't know how to ask this. Did it cost you anything to expose yourself the way you did in some of these? Or how difficult was it?
Yeah, and some of it, much of it is autobiographical. Yeah, the first chapter, is a lot about the I did the girl that was my lab partner in class. She really did die in a motorcycle accident while we were on Christmas break. I came back and found out she was dead, and so I had to do a cat with two other people, so it was a group of three. So So yeah, that was, and just found out coming back to school about that. So that was very much autobiographical. The second chapter, parts of it were autobiographical. There's a couple things they say about poets. One is that if your family still talks to you, then you're a bad poet. And the second thing that you say is, you can make, and when I'm teaching, I say you can make shit up. So all of it's not autobiographical. You have the license to make stuff up because you're a writer, and you don't have to be grounded in all the facts. You can embellish. So I did embellish quite a bit, but I did have to give up, especially in the second chapter. I think I gave up a lot of myself, and some of it was a bit hard to write. And the third chapter is almost looking into the future, because I'm not, I don't live in California anymore, number one. And number two, I'm not of the age that speaker is. So looking a bit into the future and trying to predict, that the teenager that grew up, in the 60s and 70s in California, and then that middle-aged person and experiences they had with marriage and failed relationships, and then where do they end up? So I had to do a lot of contemplation and kind of predict the future for that character. So I did have to give up a lot of myself, and some of it was difficult. But I think that's what we do as writers. So thanks for that. Does that answer your question, Mike?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's as best you can. It's I could tell that much of it was autobiographical, and I don't know, I thought it was pretty powerful. I was highly impressed. It was brilliant.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And that's high praise. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. You deserve it. I was blown away.
So my question, well, really, Mike sort of asked part of it about how much of it was personal and how much of it was just a sort of part of your life and enveloping your words into expressing parts of what you experienced growing up. So you sort of answered that. And then my other question was, so I've been to so many of the places you're referring to, so I felt like I could really relate to it just from that aspect, and just the sort of California aspect of, Arroyo and the Latino influence and the different references, poppies, and the different plants that grow here. And so I was wondering, do you think that is harder for your sort of Louisville or back east people to grasp some of your visuals and references because they haven't had that sort of out west scenery and experience at all?
That's a good question. And I did want to ground it and be very specific. So it's specific what the place is, specific with the, like you found the plants, etc. To make it more real. And I workshopped a lot of these poems going through my MFA, and the third chapter, when I wrote several poems and workshopped them in Charlotte, the third chapter was overwhelmingly received. It was, I think someone equated them to, you're writing little postcards, or you're writing on Post-it notes, or you're writing on index cards, because each one of those poems is only 12 lines long. But they were very well received, and that was people that were not, there were, the majority of people that attend Queens are people east of the Mississippi River. And so I kind of one of the things I tried to do is go a bit, not overboard, but be very, very specific, because I thought if I'm too general, maybe they won't get it, but if I'm specific enough, they'll get it. And interesting side note on chapter 2, the genesis for that, I'll just bring it, was a fight. We didn't have a fight. Molly and I had a fight, but an argument Molly and I had when we went up to Morro Bay. We weren't arguing about the smokestacks, but we were just amazed that we came all the way up here. Look, you never see the smokestacks in any postcards, any pictures.
Yeah.
But then we kind of got, we were there for 3 days and we kind of got bored, to be honest. And Molly was looking for different things to do. And she said, well, let's drive up. We can drive up to Hearst Castle and that. And I'm like, Molly, I can't drive up there because I am afraid of heights. And she's like, well, we're just stuck here. We can't do anything else. We'll go find a vineyard or something. So yeah. So the genesis for that was actually a tiff Molly and I had when we were up staying at Morro Bay.
I see. That's good. Okay. So you take some of your ideas and then launch them into other aspects too. Huh?
Yeah. So the entire second chapter really came out of that. You know, I'm afraid of heights. I'm here with a partner that wants to do all these things, but I can't do them, you know, because I can't do some of the things that she would like to do. So that difference, and it's like, well, I'm going to write some poems. And then it actually, you know, became more and more poems and then a chapter in the book as I put the book together. So.
Well, I enjoyed it. It was nice. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Yeah, I was hoping you would, you know, coming from California. So
exactly. That's, you know, I think people that, I mean, I'm sure lots of people, but I think it would really resonate well with folks that grew up, especially boys, you know, grew up in your neck of the woods and knew all the places and experienced so many similar activities.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Okay, I must leave, but thank you for inviting me.
All right. It's nice seeing you. I'll tell
You
Molly
too.
hello for you.
Please do. Take care.
All right.
Okay,
bye-bye. And Alan Bell joined us.
Hello, Alan. Hello, Brad. Welcome. And if you have any questions for Mark, feel free to ask them. Meanwhile, I'm going to ask one. And so did you have any other titles in the running? You know, I think that the book is brilliantly titled, but was there anything else before that?
What was it? I'm sorry. What? I don't understand what the question. Sorry.
Did you have any other working titles of the book before you decided? I mean, you know, I'm just talking process here because whenever I have a book that I'm working on, I have like several, I could title it this or this or this or this, right? So what else did you consider for a title? Was there anything else?
There were. I had a lot of suggestions for titles from different people. You know, we had It's Not Easy, Being a Moth. See, there were a couple of poems in these chapters. Let's see, as an example, What Happens When You Don't Wear Gloves was an idea. I Don't Have Any Better Place to Be. I Don't Think I'll Be Here Much Longer. We're all, It's the Vague That'll Kill You. And actually, I think one of the folks, let's see, who wrote blurbs on the back, you know, that wrote our cover blurbs, John Pineda. I think that was his favorite line of the book. It's the vague that'll kill you, and he suggested that as possibly a title. But you know, I didn't write the book with a title in mind at all. You know, I was done with the book. I thought I was successful in capturing the themes that I wanted to touch on in the book and the narrative thread. And then, so let's look for a title for it after it was done. So.
And the third chapter, because it doesn't have titles, and so did you write those poems in series, and how did you structure them the way that you did? I mean, it has happened to me to write title-less poems. You know, this is one of the things I do, and then I end up making them into larger series of poems. And I think that you did a really good job arranging them together, but I'm assuming now that you wrote them and then you arranged them, right? What did you do?
Yeah, within the chapters, the trying to think which chapter I actually wrote. I think the second chapter was the chapter I wrote first, because we had this idea, and then but I mean, I wrote it. I think it was five years of writing those poems, and then I thought, well, yeah, this is an interesting. What happened to this character before these episodes, and then now, and what do you think happened to this character afterwards? Well, I can use my own. And I thought, well, for the first chapter, I can use my own experiences. So let me write a set of poems of when I was a teenager, in that same voice, but just 20 or 30 years before that second chapter, and then sequencing the poems within the chapters. The first chapter, they're not really sequenced in any. It's just which poems I think worked best together and bumping against each other. The second chapter was very much on a timeline, so things had to happen before other things. So that's how I sequenced those on a timeline. And then the third chapter, it picks up. He's an older senior citizen. He's jaded, and then he finally comes to terms with his life and a reconciliation of sorts as you move to the end of that third chapter. And that final poem really summarizes where that character is, where that speaker is at the end of the book, and really at the end of his life. Does that answer your question?
I was asking mostly about the third chapter, but
the third one,
the third chapter and the titleless poems, but you did give a lot of valuable information. Another thing that I'll say right now is that I really appreciate the work with music and musicality that you do, and the rhythm and sound you do in your poems. I'm going to read several lines from a poem that you read after you drove, the last poem of the second chapter. Santa Ana gusts dust. How do you say that word? Chaparral?
Chaparral.
Okay, so Santa Ana gust dust chaparral to shades of buff brown, the air sick with sage, brush and scrub rolling down the arroyos. I worry. Do you guys hear this, monosyllabic words with the R's in them? It's just, he's drumming, isn't that brilliant? I think that's amazing. The attention to detail Mark has done with those poems is remarkable. Could you speak a little bit about your editing process throughout?
Sure.
Because one of the things that I said at the beginning is that this is really mature work, and it's visible from first glance and pays off on multiple readings and examinations.
Well, as poets, and I joke that of all the occupations in the world, poets have the highest suicide rate, because, and I think it's because we obsess over a particular word, or what's just the right word, what's just the right way to end this line. Should a comma be here or not? And I'm glad you recognize some of what I did with the poems, Katerina, because the music of the poems and the rhythm of the poems, when you're writing when you're writing that poem, and then when I go back and I do revisions and edits, I look for where is there an opportunity to encourage the reader to speed up, to encourage the reader to slow down, not necessarily through commas and punctuation, but just through the words I use, and how many syllables a word has, how I end words, and so I think you discovered that. So I try to. It's not always baked in there on a very first draft, but then I look. Okay, this is a word that means a lot to me. How can I make it even more important by putting other words around it to to emphasize it. And that, I'm glad you appreciated that, that those particular lines. And I think I use those same lines in several poems. So, that's one of the images and a few of the words that I use, I think several times through the book to reiterate and hit home some of the themes that I was talking about. So yeah, so I'm glad that you appreciated and could recognize some of that very on purpose use of language and what it is going to sound like when it is read. Thanks for I appreciate that.
And coyote appears. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There's several. Yeah. There's several words that appear throughout it. Yes.
Well, we have about 5 more minutes. If anyone else has a question that they want to ask, I don't want to deny them the opportunity.
There's Alan joined us from Los Angeles.
Welcome, Alan. I think Michael has a question.
Mike has a question.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. You explained in the beginning a little bit about the title. It's not easy being a moth. Do you? I mean, it's going to be really personal. I have a bad habit of asking very personal questions.
There you go.
But I feel like poetry is in a lot of ways, is the most personal form of writing. Do you, as the author, do you feel like a moth? And is that why you were drawn to that title over the other ones the other possibilities that you talked about?
Good question. And the answer is yes, because I always, from, they discovered a spinal cord tumor on my spine when I was in the 4th grade, and my right foot didn't grow as much as my left foot. My right leg didn't grow as much as my left leg. So I always felt a little bit odd. I was born here in Louisville, but then when I was a little kid, we moved to California, and moving to a place, where kids, kids have been, they've been together since their kindergarten, and now you got a new kid in, and the new kid's got a bad foot, and a new kid can't, can't run as fast as the other kids. And this is California, so everybody's an athlete in California, right? From an early age. So and I remember getting made fun of, when I'm trying to play volleyball, or trying to run and move. But my mom would go to there was a Kmart in Thousand Oaks near where we lived. I grew up in Agora, but out past Westlake and Thousand Oaks, there was a Kmart. My mom would go, had to get shoes for school, tennis shoes for school. And she wouldn't buy me 2 pairs of shoes. She would buy 1 pair of shoes and stuff a sock up in the toe of my right shoe so that it would reasonably fit me. But the thing is it would curl up. So I remember kids in PE always making fun of my clown shoes because it would curl up. So yes. Yeah. So a lot of that is absolutely, I never felt like the butterfly. I always felt like the moth. Absolutely. Good question.
And I think a lot of those poems are in whatever it is, right?
That's I don't know if any of these are or not. I started
poems about these issues that you're talking about.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Not these poems, but in that chapbook. Yeah. Yes.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I assumed things. And last question then. Do you miss California?
Do I miss? Absolutely, I miss California. Yes, I do. It still feels, even though I've been here, gosh, since the mid '70s, it still feels a bit like home. But as Alan will attest, when I've gone out there, where we grew up, the part of Agora that I grew up in was very rural. There were people who used to ride their horses to the high school football games at Agora on Saturdays. We didn't have lights at the stadium. They would ride their horses and let the horses go and graze on the hill, and they just watched the football games from the hill up above there, and then ride their horses back home. And now it's even it was hard to find where my high school was when I got off the freeway the last time I was out there. It has just grown up so much. So yes, I do miss it. There are parts of it, like if you get north of Zuma Beach, it looks for all intents and purposes very much like it did when I grew up in California. So some of the places haven't changed much, some changed a lot, but yeah, I do miss it. I do miss it a lot. I sure do.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you everyone for our time together. This book, It's Not Easy Being a Moth, brought to you by Accents Publishing, is available on our website, on Amazon, directly through Mark Lee Webb, and I guess wherever books are sold. And recording of this event will be posted. Thank you very much.
And everybody, Christmas is coming up, and these books make great gifts for all your friends and family. So please buy 20 or 30 each and then give them as gifts, and we will all appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, actually, we have free shipping if anyone buys 3. So even if it's 3 of anything, but you know, even 3 of Mark's. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later, Mark.
Okay, bye. Hi, Alan.